Incoming transmission.
The Klingonese word of the day is Makwai.
These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
So, this is a huge victory for the good guys.
Scotty, beam me up.
Resistance is futile. Live long and prosper.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Greetings and welcome to the Computer Resumed podcast, the show covering the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order for fans new and old. I'm your host, writer-comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis. If you happen to be on the Enterprise D, don't confuse her with the janitor or the engineer or HR.
Yeah!
Or Lil Jon?
What?
She is the social media Star Trek Sketch-Scene Scribe and co-host of the TNG podcast. You know her on Instagram as the SciFiSavage. It's Shereese. Yay!
Okay!
Shereese, hey!
Hello, and thank you so much, Todd, for that wonderful welcome.
Oh, so excited to have you.
I've never felt more welcomed until this moment here, so thank you.
I'm so happy to have you on. Like, the way I meet new people and have them on the show is I scroll through Instagram and just go, oh, that looks like they're having fun.
And I was, I laughed when you said Lil Jon. I guess I didn't read that part in the notes. I was like, huh? What?
To be
that's
honest,
a great
like,
video. If you haven't seen it, definitely, we'll tell you where to find it later, but that's a fun one.
I'll be honest, like, going through your videos, I was like, that's funny. That's funny. And then it got to that video. I was just like, this is gold. This is so great.
Genius. Thank you. Yeah. So we were talking off screen. And so if you join Patreon, you might be able to hear it. But we were talking about Todd's comedy career and the difference between stand-up comedians and improv comedians, which there's a difference. That's news to me. But I do sketch comedy. So for me, like, stand-up comedy is terrifying. I can't plan things and make sure the timing's perfect. So I try to do things. I try to make my videos really funny so that people who are doom scrolling can have just a little bit of joy in the midst of the doom.
Oh my gosh. It's so needed nowadays. Let me ask you this. So you mentioned that you are a sketch comedian. I don't know a lot specifically about sketch. So the way I've interpreted it is it's a little play. So you are crafting jokes the way a traditional stand-up does, but in the context of a scene, whereas a traditional comedian would be up there by themselves playing the scene out by themselves. So they are playing multiple characters, they are pantomiming use of props and things like that, but you're doing more, that's all in the script, correct?
Yes, exactly. So I'm doing all the parts. I'm also doing the props or the pantomiming or whatever, but I'm just doing it with myself. Like, I just have conversations with myself. I will change outfits on occasion or change the angle of the camera to make it look like it's a different person. But that's one of the beautiful things about doing videos on social media is people's imaginations are just ready. Like, you don't need to have highly produced, beautiful things like you would need on SNL or Key and Peele. You really can just, like, throw on a sweater and then put on a different sweater and boom, you're two different people, which is great. But yeah, it's the same idea, but it's crafting jokes that are very small, because in a set or even in a sketches are like 3.5 minutes. My videos are 30 seconds. So you've got to really, like, make it super tight, and your joke has to be able to come across, like, immediately. Like, it has to hit them with that zinger at the very end in 30 seconds or less. So it's kind of a fun constraint.
You know, I've found that when I started getting into comedic writing, I would test jokes out on Twitter, because you had back in the day when it was Twitter, you had a very limited space. And so you kind of had to that's where the editing process, I was like, okay, is this really necessary? Can I streamline this joke a little bit more? And definitely given my thoughts on the woes of being a creative person in the digital age of I've worked so hard to get good at, in my case, stand up, that now I also have to be good on the tech side too. And it's like
Mm,
I've put all my effort into this. Now I have to be
yeah.
good at this thing. So,
Yeah.
but flip side to that coin, you learn about timing, you learn about editing, you learn about lighting, you learn about sound. And so I guess I've gleaned a lot of that from podcasting, but it sounds like you've done it through TikTok, Instagram, and other things like that. Is that about the sum total?
Yeah, I mean, some people that's not your jam, and if you're very creative, like just be in your zone of genius and
Mm.
outsource these things, like have someone edit for you. When I first started editing was so painful. So for anyone out there who creates content, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, including editing podcasts. It's
Oh
just so
yes.
painful. It's so painful. And I really wanted somebody to edit for me, but because of the type of content that I do, which is all funny skits about Star Trek, you cannot have General Joe Schmo edit the video. He needs to know what are the punchlines. He needs to know what is the setup. He needs to know the fact that I'm moving my shirt like this is because Picard moved his shirt like this. That's not an editable part. You have to leave that. That is the joke.
Right.
Like it's just stuff that like somebody else outside of my brain wouldn't necessarily know. So I had to be the editor, which made me really bitter and salty at first because I was like, I don't want to do this. Can somebody else do this for me? But in the end, I realized that it's part of the creation process. To get the thing in my head out in real
Yeah.
life, I have to be the one kind of crafting and sculpting and creating that thing so that the
Hmm.
vision comes to life. And it actually is really satisfying. So while I am so much better at editing now, and I don't hate it, like I don't despise it with a passion like I used to, I still don't love it, but I do see
Yeah.
it as a necessary evil to get my exact vision. Like it would take more time for me to explain to someone exactly how to do the thing I want to do than it would take just to do the thing I want to do.
Right.
So, and the other thing too, which I love about our ability to podcast or to do stuff on social media is we don't have to wait for anybody to give us permission, and we don't have to wait for anyone's approval, and we don't have to have anyone else to say, no, you should do the joke like this, not like that. You know what I mean? Like we could just do it as we want to do it. And
Yeah.
so the controlling part of me really loves that. And editing is part of that, right? To be like, well, I wrote the script, I did the acting, I did every part of it, and nobody could tell me no. I did everything I want to do, and I didn't have to wait for permission, and I posted it, and then I went to sleep. And that feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's kind of rewind a little bit here and go back. When did you first did you are you trained in sketch comedy? Did you go to school for it or go to somewhere like Groundlings or Second City or UCB and study there? Or like what's the origin story of the Sci-Fi Savage?
Yeah, I feel so honored that you would ask me that question and include those items in my byline. None of those things are true. No, I went to school for microbiology, immunology, and molecular genetics. I am a
Cool.
trained scientist,
Nice.
and I am now an educator. So I teach math and science to high school and middle school students. So there's no real part of me that's thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
You don't see it, but off screen, he's bowing to the profession of teaching little ones.
Yes.
Appreciate it. So I don't have any training in comedy other than having a really traumatic life and growing up using comedy to like protect my mental health, which I think a lot of comedians can probably relate to.
Yeah.
Um, and when I decided, so a couple years ago, rewinding back to how I became the Sci-Fi Savage, during 2020, during the pandemic, we were teaching kids on Zoom, which was actually lovely for my energy, terrible for their learning, but lovely for my energy. I was
Yeah.
like, ooh, I'm like just so alive right now because I didn't have the commute and all the things. So me and one of my friends, one of my best friends who's also a teacher, we were like, what are we going to do with all this newfound energy? And we decided to start the TNG podcast, which is an episode by episode review of The Next Generation, Star Trek The Next Generation. So we both loved this show as kids and didn't even know we both like Star Trek for many, many years into our friendship. And then we're like, oh my gosh, let's do a podcast on it. And then I just fell in love. I started this community on Clubhouse, which was an audio only social media platform. It still exists, but sort of not really. But at the time in 2020, when everyone was trapped in their homes, so many people were on this app because it was a way to verbally just talk to people and connect and share stories. And at one point we had over 2,000 people in this group, 2,000 awesome nerds who were meeting multiple times a week to just talk about shows and movies and short stories. And it was so fun and so satisfying and so fulfilling. And that's when I realized like, wow, I'm actually like into this. Like this isn't just something that I've sort of been doing for my whole life in the background. Like this is something I am just obsessed with. So I just jumped into it. So we finished our podcast. You can still go listen to it, but we reviewed all the episodes of TNG. We finished them. It took us a couple years, but we finished all the episodes. And after that, I was like, I apparently am not done talking about Star Trek. I still want to talk about it. It's been over 30 years. I'm still got stuff to say apparently. So that's when I started all the social media channels to do all these little skits and stories. And I started the YouTube channel to just keep talking about my love of Star Trek. And going on to the question of, why comedy is as I was doom scrolling and thinking about what kind of content do I want to create, it was always the funny skits, the sketches, like they just made me laugh so hard and made me feel like this is what the internet is for, these moments.
Yes.
And so I was like, that's what I want to create for other people. I remember a time like maybe 10 years or so when I was just like super, super depressed. And I watched this movie called Frequently Asked Questions About Time Travel. It's like the most random dumb movie ever.
Yeah.
But I laughed my butt off on this movie. And I went from being like -100 to like -80. And that's huge. That's huge when you're like when you're in a depressive state. So like that just never that always stuck with me. That laughter is really a good medicine and it gives you hope and it reminds you that the world is not as dark as it always seems or as it often seems. That there is joy, there is light, there is happiness, there's goodness in the world. Like it just reminded me of that. And that's a gift that I wanted to give to other people. And so I was like, I want to talk about Star Trek because I want to keep geeking out about it, but I also want people to just be able to laugh or smile or be like, oh my gosh, I remember that. What was going on in that episode? And that's kind of where it's come from. And I feel like I have been successful at that. Like whenever people comment and they're like, oh, this is my first time smiling all day. I'm just like, I'm so glad that I got to be the one to help you do that today.
Yeah, it really is something to have somebody come up to you and say, that thing you did or that thing you said or this bit or this joke or whatever, man, that makes me laugh. Or I thought about it a couple days later and laughed all over again. I have a bit in my act about the Backstreet Boys, and I end up singing a little bit of a part of one of the songs, and another comedian friend of mine texted me randomly and goes, damn it, Todd, I was walking through Walmart and I heard this song and I was like, oh man. But
I love that. I love that.
And it's such a great feeling. And it is, I said this at the top, before we started that, gosh, it's so needed nowadays to, be able to, the Brits say, take the piss out of some of this darkness, evil crap that's in the world, and remind people that there are good things, there are good people, and there's people still laughing, there are still things to laugh about, and it's a great thing. So something you said set me up perfectly for this next question, which we are going to rewind even further and say, what was your, I won't ask you your age, but you did kind of out yourself a little bit saying you remember watching TNG as a kid. That we've got a little bit of a ballpark there because so do I. What is your earliest Star Trek memory? Like, when did it come into your life? What was the catalyst? Did somebody introduce it to you? Did you stumble across it? Like, what's the genesis there for your trek through Trek?
Great question. I was very little. My mom was trying to get me to watch the original series because she and my dad loved it. And I refused to watch it because I refused to watch any quote unquote old people shows that she would try to make me watch, even though some of them like I really, really loved, but I liked it despite myself. So I was just like, I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to watch an old people show. And so when TNG came out, she was like, this one's new. How about you watch this one? It's brand new. It's just now coming out. It's not old at all. So I was like, fine, I guess I'll give it a chance. And I absolutely loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. So really, I have my mom to thank for getting me into Star Trek. And it's so funny because looking back, like when we started the TNG podcast, going back through season 1, I was like, this is terrible. What would a little kid see in this that would make them love this? I don't know. Like, this is just not good. But, little brains are different. And I'm sure I was just like, ooh, space travel, aliens. Like, everything was so magical and exciting. But it's really funny because, and I was telling you before we started recording that I recently have started to watch TOS. Thanks, Mom. I should tell her that. I should tell her that I've actually started to watch the show. It only took me several decades to agree with her. And it's so good. And I'm like, oh my gosh, little Shereese would have freaking loved this. She was so stubborn. She would have loved this show. It is so fun. Yeah. But at least Big Shereese gets to enjoy it now.
Yeah. And because I came to I took a similar journey of kind of stumbling across it early on and then didn't really get into TOS until much later. Mm-hmm. But once I did, that was also the beginning of like my film analysis age where I'm, watching weird movies and kind of getting into some of the behind the scenes, paying attention who's the writer, paying attention to the director, paying attention to certain producers and things like that. And in addition to show analysis, it was also writing analysis and like looking at those TOS episodes. They're very well written. Like, okay, the, cardboard sets and visible zippers on the alien skin and stuff like that. If you can set aside that, if you can suspend your disbelief and look at what they're talking about, look at some of the subject matter that they were addressing in the 60s. Like, this show was so ahead of its time and got away with a lot of stuff that most other like well-respected shows couldn't do.
Because they weren't in the future in space where everything's okay.
Exactly. And honestly, and of course now here we are, episode 3 of the first season of Starfleet Academy came out yesterday. And it's kind of fun to see that that's still the formula. Like, we're still talking about our world. It's just the people who are talking about it are green and blue skinned and have antennas
which is why the show has lasted the test of time. It's because of the layers.
Yes.
It's because of it's kind of like one of my mentors used to say, give your clients chocolate covered broccoli. Meaning give them what they want and give them what they need.
Yes.
And that is Star Trek. Like the crazy costumes and aliens and space battles, that's the chocolate. And the layers of commentary on social matters, that's the broccoli. Like that's the thing that's the heart behind the stories that make them last, that make us think about them, that make us go like, oh my gosh. And I actually love it because it's easier to talk about these hard issues when we're talking about aliens in space. Because we don't come with our immediate biases, with our knee-jerk reactions, with our memorized phrases that we always say whenever we hear this thing. It's like you actually have to process the situation externally and then bring it into you to say like, oh my gosh, how do I treat people? How do I think about this thing? It's this is why we love Trek.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to me, here at I'm gonna derail us for just a slight moment here. It's interesting to be on social media and see the folks who are, well, this isn't like it was in Legacy Trek of just
this doesn't match Gene's vision. This is literally Gene's vision. This is literally Gene's vision.
The older stuff was written so much better. I was like, okay, go dig up Dottie Fontana and have her write an episode of Starfleet Academy. I love the old stuff too. But if you continuously have the same people telling those stories, then you're ruling out so many other possibilities, so many different perspectives. Like, some people are still complaining about the diversity in Star Trek. And I'm quick to say, like, take a look. It's more diverse now in front of and behind the camera than it's ever been. Is it perfect? No.
And has it ever been perfect?
No.
This is what the legacy people won't necessarily acknowledge, that it's always been this. It's always been this. It's had upsides, it's had downsides, it's had flaws, it's had ways that it's pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
And if you don't like a particular show, maybe it's just not your thing. That's okay. There's like a million of these shows. Just don't watch it.
Yeah, just don't watch it. And also, it should be noted, just because you don't like it doesn't make it bad.
Right. It's just not your preference.
It's just not for you. Anyways, getting back on track, one of the kind of cursory, meeting a new Trekkie, the question that is inevitably asked, and I think I might know the answer here, but I will certainly ask. And it's a two-part question. Who is your captain and who is the best captain? Because it's not always the same person.
This is very true. So I will say, as a teacher, it is important to have a rubric. So when it comes to the quote unquote best captain, it doesn't make sense to me unless we have some criteria. So, like the best captain at XYZ, or the best captain in this particular scenario, or the best captain at leadership, or whatever. So, that the answer to that question actually changes depending on the context of the question. So I'll answer the first one first. My absolute favorite captain is Janeway. That's the one I grew up watching, and I wanted to be her when I grew up, and I still want to be her when I grow up. Like, I love the loyalty she engenders. I love it when she's like, I don't like bullies. Computer self-destruct. I'm just like, let's go. Like, you think you're going to push around Janeway? That is the last person that you're going to push around. And I just like really admired that as a young girl, like the strength she had, and also the femininity and the beauty that she had. And she just was like, she wasn't a woman who had to act like a man to be in a quote unquote man's job. She was a woman doing a job, period. And I was just like enamored. So Janeway will always be my captain. Always, always, always. If we're talking about the best captain, just in terms of who would I want to work for, okay, so that's the criteria here. It would be Picard, hands down. That is who I would want to work for, because he is just the best boss ever. Like, he listens to his people, he takes into account their opinions, and then he makes a measured decision of how to move forward. And I really appreciate that, because some of the other captains, like Janeway, for example, she don't listen to nobody. So, like, she would not make a good boss. She just does what she wants to do. She does what she wants to do. Yeah. And then I feel like, Kirk is always off on an away mission. So is Michael Burnham. They're not even here to ask questions. These captains are not even on the ship. So we don't even need those. Cisco, I feel like he was very open-handed with his crew. It was just like, yeah, I mean, Kira would be like, hey, I'm going to go do an act of terrorism this weekend, but I'll be back on Monday. And he's like, cool, see you then. Like, he's a little too hands off for me as a boss.
Fill the runabout up with gas when you bring it back.
Seriously. Park it by cargo slot 3, because I got some terrorism I need to do myself. And then I feel like Pike just doesn't have a backbone. Super nice guy, super sweet guy. But I feel like people are just like, hey, Pike, we should do this. And he's like, okay. Like, it's just like, okay, what should we do, you guys? Okay, let's do that. That sounds good. And that also would stress me out if I worked for him, because I would need to know that he's thinking through every choice and then making the right decision. He's not just taking the first suggestion that comes to him, because what if it's a terrible suggestion? Yeah. So anyways, this is why I feel like Picard would be the best boss, because in these different, maybe dysfunctional workplaces that all the ships could be, I feel like that's the one where he's going to hear people out and then make his own thoughtful decision. He's not going to just listen to everybody. He's not going to ignore everybody. He's not going to let everybody do whatever they want to do. But at the end of the day, he's going to own it. He's going to own the decision that he made. Like, this is why I made this decision. Good or bad, this is what it is. And he doesn't really regret those things, right? A lot of times he'll be like, he said that thing to Data where he was like, sometimes you can do everything right and things still turn out wrong. Yeah. And I admire somebody who has that perspective.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's so funny because our choices, mine, are actually the reverse.
No way. What are the odds?
I was raised on TNG. Picard actually kind of looks like my dad. So, and to be honest, and I was thinking about this earlier, it's just there are some very select individuals that very young Todd growing up looked at and was like, oh, that's what it is to be a man. Like that. So Riker was one of those figures for me of like, he got ladies, but he was also like super respectful and like really good at his job, was super friendly, but So Picard is my captain. But Janeway, I feel, is the best captain. Now, for a while there, because you're actually the first person that I've heard with negative comments about Pike, which I find really interesting, because you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. But I think what overshadows a lot of that is the Captain America speeches that Pike gets to give. Thank God for those fantastic writers. But yeah, Janeway um, had her ship was not meant to be out that far.
Hmm.
Half of her crew wanted her dead before they left DS9. Integrated not only a member of the Borg, but Borg technology into the ship, and for the most part, got everybody home. Like,
Hmm.
that's impressive.
Got home
That
at
is,
all.
yeah,
We often ask this question with my little group of Trek tubers of like, what if the other captains were in charge of XYZ ship? And it's
yeah,
like, could any other captain have gotten the ship home? I don't think so.
yeah.
Could they have gotten the ship home at all? Second question, if they got home at all, how many members of their crew would still be alive?
Oof.
It's just
Yeah,
going to be Janeway. It's just
yeah,
Janeway for
yeah.
that.
Because you look at Archer, and like Starfleet back then was just kind of like, okay, you kids have fun. Tell us what breaks, and like, and then we'll write the policy and procedure. We'll write that based off of what happens out there. Don't get us into any wars. Like, and then you had, TOS. Kirk was very much he's a space pirate. He's essentially a space pirate.
People usually say space cowboy. That's my first time hearing pirate.
Yeah,
But either way, he would just roll into town and be like, blow up that machine. And you're like, but that's their entire way of life. I don't care. Blow it up. You're like, okay. We don't care about consequences. No, we don't. And we're going to fly
right.
away at the end of the day. You're like, okay.
Yeah, like Picard is the soldier sailor.
Hmm.
You got Cisco, who was very much, like, literally and figuratively, very much a dad.
Mm-hmm. A really
Janeway,
great dad. Yeah.
I always refer to Janeway as the shepherd. Um, Pike is very much, he's somewhere in between Archer the explorer and like figuring out that diplomacy type thing. Like, they're still kind of in a very, very much a gray area where it's like, okay, the dust is still settling on some wars. So we're just gonna be real careful about where we step and all that. I love what's going on Starfleet Academy.
Yeah.
And let's not forget Lower Decks.
And
Um,
Prodigy.
yeah, and Prodigy. That everything's been really, really fantastic. So I'm glad you brought that up about Pike. I'm gonna have to go back and take a second look. Let's be honest, like a 12th look at Pike and his captaining style.
Seriously, like look at him in Discovery, because every time he's like, Michael, don't do XYZ. She's like, got it. And then she does it. And then he's like, nah, that's fine. Whatever. Like every episode, you're just like, what was even the point of saying that, Pike? Why did you even say that? Why didn't you just say, Michael, you do what you want to do. We'll be here waiting for you on Wednesday. We'll pick you up then. Like just, but the thing is because he's so nice, I think, is why
Yeah.
everybody's like, but he's so nice. And I do think he's nice. And I do think he's a lovely person. He's probably the only captain that I would want to actually be friends with. However,
Okay, yeah.
I don't want him to be my boss. My friend and my boss are two different things. I
Yeah.
would not respect that kind of leader who's just like super nice and just so easygoing and all ideas are great ideas. Like, nah, because they're
I
not all great.
I think the one thing that Pike has going for him in the plus column is what he did in Discovery, which was grabbing the time crystal, like
Hmm.
knowing his fate
Hmm.
and sealing it by grabbing the time crystal.
It gives him layers.
Yeah, it gives him layers. It is certainly an incredible act of, I'll say, personal bravery of like sealing your fate and living with that, like knowing
Hmm.
it's coming, man. Like, do whatever you like, but it's coming. So I think between that and the Captain America speeches, I was kind of leaning on that because he was kind of like, for a while there, I was looking at stuff like that. And he was inching higher on the list, on the ranked list of best to worst captains.
Hmm.
But you really helped put that in perspective for me. So I'm gonna go take another look at his overall captain style and reevaluate that. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got, like I said, we are post episode 3 of Starfleet Academy, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today we are talking about Strange New Worlds, season 2, episode 6, Lost in Translation. What was this episode for you? Like, upon initial watch, upon rewatch, like, what did you get out of it? Let's stay spoiler free for now, but like, what are your initial thoughts about this episode, Lost in Translation?
Well, this is actually the first Stranger Worlds episode I had ever seen.
Really?
I've seen it now, but like this was the first one I'd ever seen, I don't know, maybe a year ago. A friend of mine, I was on his podcast, the Trek Mary Kill podcast, and I think we were doing maybe like spooky Trek for Halloween or something like that. Maybe that was his theme for the month. And so I was the guest on this one episode, and I was like, I haven't seen Strange New Worlds, and he was like, it's fine, just watch it, and like we'll talk about it. It's pretty standalone. It does have some callbacks, but you could watch this episode and just enjoy it. So this was the first one I ever watched, and it was super spooky. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful because Strange New Worlds and Discovery and Prodigy actually are so gorgeous. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like they put all Trek combined in the past to shame because it's just so beautiful. And it doesn't even need to be that beautiful. It doesn't even need that. Like
Yeah.
it could just be a regular show and I would still enjoy it. But it's movie quality level gorgeous. So I remember thinking that. And I remember being like, I really like this young Uhura. Like I love this character. It's just I just enjoy her. She just seems so like I don't want to say naive, but just kind of like young and fresh and new and finding her way. She really brings in that young ensign energy into the role.
Yeah.
And I just think
Yeah.
she killed it in this episode. Now, rewatching it for this conversation, now I have seen not only all of Strange New Worlds, but I've also seen TOS. So now I have more context than I had when I
Mhm.
watched that. And it didn't change my joy of it. Like it was the same experience that I really just thought it was really spooky, really creepy. The monster makeup was amazing. And very beautiful to watch and a really simple story. And that's all we need. We need a simple story that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I felt like it was super engaging. There was no parts of the episode where I was kind of like distracted, which is good storytelling. It kind of moved the story along and you're like, okay, what's going on? And then it gives you a satisfying conclusion. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I knowing now, especially the formula of Strange New Worlds, in that while being very cinematic, it is episodic in structure, but they have poured every ounce of Trek cinema into every single one of these episodes, in that they do, and every episode of Strange New Worlds so far stands on its own, kind of as its own little mini movie, which
Hmm.
is when I talk to folks who are cinephiles who enjoy Trek but haven't gotten to Strange New Worlds yet, I'm like, do yourself a favor, jump
Just skip
in.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, like jump into this. It's better than it has any reason to be. It should not be as good as it is. Fantastic cast. It's gorgeous, just like you
Hmm.
said. It's very well written. They move this thing along so that it is strange and new, but still in very much the world of Trek. Like it
Hmm.
still feels very authentically Trek. Yeah, and with this episode, everything seems kind of in the cold open, everything seems kind of standard run of the mill. Okay, what kind of space shenanigans are we getting into today? All right, we're gathering space dust to make a gas station. Okay, cool. That's pretty neat. We got some cool effects shots. Okay. Hey, what's that noise? Holy crap, a zombie. Like
Didn't
and
see that coming.
yeah, I didn't see that coming. And but man, and like you said, the monster effects, the monster makeup on Bruce Horak. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but like, God, is it fantastic?
Hmm.
Just
So well
really
done.
so good. Yeah, and of course, Uhura, like Celia Rose Gooding is so great at, well, she's fantastic at playing this era of Uhura. And every now and then I don't know if this is by design, if it's a directing choice, if it's an acting choice or whatever it is, but she'll do a little movement with her face. And it is so classic Uhura. Like and again, it's not this episode. I think it's in Subspace Rhapsody. The
Mm.
very end, she does this thing where she purses her lips, and it's like, there it is. It's right there. And I love turns like that. Paul Wesley does a similar thing, playing Kirk, like big shoes to fill, like
Yeah.
iconic role, but
Yeah.
he very much owns it while at the same time, the cadence of his voice every now and then, or the scrunching of his eyebrows, he'll do a very a Shatnerism, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of just enough to be like, yeah, let's not forget what came before. That's his very subtle wink of like, I know what I'm doing here. Listen, we could beat around the bush all day, but I can tell that both of us are just chomping at the bit to get into the nitty-gritty of this episode. So let's not waste any time. Let's get to this week's recap.
Brought to you in part by our Patreon supporters, Rev J, Jerry Antimano, Kitty B, Ed Milner, Fleet Admiral First Class Fred Sims, and Wren, Sir Chauncey Dalton Featherstone Waugh III, Esquire, Zitzman Chiropractic, Dawn Ringheiser, and Nate D.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
We found evidence of sabotage.
Sabotage? Starfleet officers aren't supposed to randomly hallucinate.
This is very real. You aren't imagining it.
Captain! You have to shut down the station. It's a matter of life or death.
Contact Starfleet. We're being attacked by an enemy.
Enterprise joins the USS Farragut to repair a deuterium refinery.
How exciting.
Uhura begins experiencing hallucinations of strange noises and frightening images, including the deaths of her parents and of former Enterprise engineer Hemmer.
And on that note, we cue the music.
Pelia discovers that the refinery has been sabotaged. Farragut officer Lieutenant Saul Ramon is responsible.
I knew it!
He's taken to sickbay, exhibiting symptoms like Uhura's. Ramon escapes and attempts to sabotage the Enterprise. Uhura pursues him and unsuccessfully attempts to calm him down. Kirk, visiting from the Farragut,
Oh, he's so handsome.
rescues her before Ramon is blown into space by an explosion. Uhura discusses her hallucinations with Kirk, and he helps her realize that she needs to confront her grief about her parents and Hemmer rather than ignoring it.
Hell yeah!
Uhura realizes that her hallucinations are messages from aliens who live in the deuterium and are being killed by the refinery. She reports her theory to Pike, and he orders the refinery destroyed.
Hell yeah.
Uhura later introduces Kirk to Spock.
And there was much rejoicing.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Gordon, the voice of the USS Protostar on Star Trek Prodigy. You're listening to the Computer Resume podcast.
Okay, we are now in spoiler territory. So we've got some fun things to unpack with this episode. Right off the bat, what jumps out to you? Like, what were some of the interesting interactions? We've got one of the things that really stood out to me was the interaction between Pelia and Una on the deuterium refinery. Like, we've seen, Carol Kane. Oh, God love Carol Kane. She's so great. A little cartoony in this, but that's the point.
Yeah.
But Una also very much like the cool camp counselor who, yeah, she's in charge. She's the commander, but like very cool. But at this point, like big butting of heads here. Like, what did you think of this interaction between the two of them?
Yeah, I do love some Carol Kane. However, this episode was one of the episodes that made me go, I do not like Pelia. She talks too slow and she's getting on my nerves. It wasn't until a future episode, whatever episode was the one where La'an goes back in time.
Yes, that was earlier this season.
Okay,
tomorrow and tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, so that episode, I was like, oh my gosh, I love Pelia. Like that episode, but this was the first episode I saw, right? So I saw this episode first, and then I went back and saw it from the first, from episode 1 all the way through.
Right.
So in that scene, I was just like, why is she talking so slow? What is going on right now? Who is this woman? Like, I was just getting really annoyed. I was feeling Una's annoyance throughout the scene, which I don't know how I would have felt had I watched it chronologically if I would have been a more unbiased observer of this interaction. But I was on Team Una. I was like, yes, what is her deal? Like, what's her problem? Like, why is she getting in the way? Like, focus and fix this thing. I do like how we get to see Una lose her cool a bit because we don't usually see that. We do see her get annoyed. We do see her get upset, but not to this extent when she slams down the data pad and she's like, "You're sloppy. You have crumbs on your shirt or crumbs on your uniform. When did you even eat?" And she just like goes off on everything she doesn't like about Pelia. And Pelia's just like, "Okay, thanks for sharing." I mean, it was just a very interesting dynamic because you can see that somehow Una has reached the end of her tether, something we have not seen before. And Pelia couldn't care less. She just wanted to have it out. She just wanted to hear it. Like, stop with the snide remarks. Say what you want to say. Okay, now we can move on. And Pelia is so unbothered by anybody liking or disliking her, which was good because I didn't like her. So I was like, I'm glad someone hurt her feelings.
It was funny to me, and the fact that you're a teacher, and one of the things that was kind of a thorn in the side of Una was the fact that this teacher who harshly, perhaps unfairly, graded Una, that this was kind of brought back around. Do you wonder about folks you teach and how that is that a thought of like, how is this? What am I saying that's going to stick with them for 10, 20, 30 years or more? Like, is there something what did you get anything out of that?
That's a great question. No, I never think that thought. What are they going to keep? Probably because I teach math and science, and if my students don't go on to do math or be scientists, they will remember none of this probably. Or they'll have some vague recollection when they hear it again on Jeopardy or something like that. So I'm not as concerned with the content and with the grades and the points because those things, while they seem very important in the moment, a month later, a year later, once you're in college, like who even cares? But what I do spend a lot of effort and energy and time thinking about is two things. One is empowering my students, teaching them to love learning. Because it doesn't matter what you learn, but if you know how to learn, that is the key. That is the skill. That is the thing that will take you anywhere you ever want to go. If you can learn how to do something. But if you think you're a stupid person and you can't learn, you've already blocked yourself from every opportunity in life. So one major push is empowering students in their own learning, regardless of the topic, regardless of the concept. It's like, can I teach myself new things? Can I learn new things? Can I go and find that information if I don't have that information? How do I search for it? The second thing is being a charismatic adult, which just means just a loving, caring, kind grown-up in their lives who actually cares about their well-being and happiness and mental health. And that's the other thing that I put a lot of attention and focus into. Like, did my students feel heard? Did they feel seen? And obviously this is in the context of teaching math and science. But if I have a student who comes in and they're really upset and distraught, it's like, all right, is this something we need to talk about? Is this something we need to push through? Which tools can I give them now that's going to help them in the future? Sometimes it's like, let's sit and talk about this. Let's process this. We can get to the science and math later, but let's talk about what's going on. Other times it's like, you're having a really hard day, but sometimes you have a hard day and you still have to come to work. You still have to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep going. And here's the tools you're going to use to focus, even when you're feeling unfocused. So that's more what I put a lot of energy and attention to. It doesn't matter if they remember whether or not Shereese taught them this. It more matters that they have these tools in their tool belt so that they can be effective citizens in the world as they get older.
It's so, first of all, it's encouraging to hear you say that's the main driving force of your teaching style. My wife and I actually attended the same high school. Our birthdays are just far enough apart that she was actually a year ahead of me, but both of us are definitely in that elder millennial era where they didn't really care
about any of that. It was all about test scores.
Yeah,
get your homework done.
It's about the scores.
Yeah.
let's keep the girls unpregnant and the boys out of jail. Let's make sure that they can get jobs. Test scores. Let's keep them at C's or better, and just get them out the door. With not really a thought to, hey, this one's exhibiting, an aptitude in English and writing and drama and performance, or this one's showing an aptitude in math and science and this, that, the other, or this one seems to be having some problems. Like, and
all the words are backwards. So this one needs more help.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to do in a classroom with kids.
It's
I think this is the reaction though. I think this, like, my philosophy is a reaction to how we were raised, right? Because it's because I had and I hope you did too, but I had the teachers who were like I am. And those were my favorite teachers, right?
Yeah.
The teachers who were like, how are you doing? How was your weekend? Or just like, I could tell they actually cared about me as a person. And those were the teachers that really, really stuck with me. It made such a huge impact. And I couldn't tell you a thing they taught me, right? Which I'm sure they did teach me things, but not like the technical classroom stuff, but it was more the socials. Or I remember one of my teachers, I think it was maybe third grade, and she had some treats or something, and I really wanted one, but I didn't ask for one because I was impossibly shy as a kid. And I remember she turned to me and just said, "Closed mouths don't get fed." And I was like, what does that mean? Because I hadn't heard that expression before. And she was like, ask for what you want. If you don't ask, you won't get it. And I was like, can I have one, please? It was like the hardest thing to do. And she was like, yes, you can have one. But just like that lesson, that is a life lesson right there. Closed mouths don't get fed. Ask for what you want in the world. I needed a grown-up to tell me that thing because that is not how we were raised. To ask for what you want was not what I was raised to understand.
Yeah, it was very much, my experience was I did have some good teachers who didn't just see me as a blunt instrument, and again, I can't tell you a thing they taught me, but I definitely recall more than one teacher saying, like, listen, the stuff, the fact that you're having to sit here, it's a pain in the butt. Welcome to life on planet Earth. However, some of the things that I'm telling you are going to come back around. And if you can at least, you might not get good at it, but if you get used to it, when you encounter it out there, you won't be caught on your heels. Like, you'll have a general idea of how to navigate it and, pay attention to the things going on in the world. Like, this, history, it comes back around, like, and all that stuff. And we're definitely seeing that today. So there's that. And that was interesting. And again, it's interesting just juxtaposing Pelia and Una's perception of Pelia's teaching, as we are seeing Uhura reminiscing about her teacher Hemmer. And his style of him joking around with her and being like, hey, you got to breathe, you got to relax. Yes, this is important, but if you're wound so tense, tight, you're gonna snap. And that's
also, I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's such an important thing to impart to your students, of like, hey, take a second, breathe, relax, think. And if you can do that, that will handle probably 8 or 9 out of 10 problems that you'll encounter. Take a breath, stop, and think.
100%. Problems of all kinds.
Yeah.
And then the second part of your question of, do I ever think that a student's going to come back to me and be like, you gave me a C in this topic and I can't believe it and I never forgave you. Yeah, I could not imagine that scenario. It sounds like the most petty, silly thing that anyone could ever do.
Yeah.
I don't imagine that. However, I definitely have had students who have felt like I personally did not like them and wanted to see them fail, which is why I didn't give them good grades for their work. Not because their work was inaccurate, which is what I communicated. Like, no, the work is inaccurate. And it's because it's the same thing that Pelia did, where Pelia said, it's not about the C, it's about Hemmer. It's like I have that same perspective for me is when I have students who are like, you just didn't like me and you had something against me. First of all, boo, I don't think about you. Like, outside of classroom, I'm living my own life. However, when I'm in the classroom, what I am thinking about is how can I make you successful? What I'm not thinking about is how can I screw you over because I've got nothing better to do today. Like, that's not why I got into teaching.
Right.
But I know that when students feel that way, and I'm thinking more of like the college students that I've taught, I haven't had any K through 12s say that to me yet, because maybe they don't have the words to communicate that, but I have had adults say that. And I think it's coming from a place of thinking their grades is some kind of a verdict on who they are as a person, as opposed to a grade is a verdict about how you did on recalling this topic. It's not about who you are as a human being. It has nothing to do with that at all. This is not a grade of your personhood. It's just about how well did you understand glycolysis. You know what I mean? Like, it's very separated from you. And it's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're the one being judged, which is what grading feels like. When you're the one being judged or critiqued or criticized, it starts to feel personal. But at least in the classroom, at least in my classroom, it is not personal. It's about the work. It's not about you. It's about the work. Now, sometimes they're connected if it's like you're being really lazy and not trying, but then you got a bad grade because you didn't really try. You didn't get a bad grade because you're not smart. You know what I mean? Even if you are judging yourself, you're probably still judging yourself on the wrong thing or the wrong way. It's almost always about your behavior or your understanding of something, not about who you are. And I think it was very astute of Pelia to see and notice that in both Una and in Uhura. Because both times she was just like, you're treating me this way because of Hemmer.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
You don't understand that yet, but I understand that immediately. And then the other person's like, oh, shoot, have I been doing that?
Well, yeah. And I'll be honest. I have a story about getting an unfair grade from a teacher, but I'm gonna save that for the after show. So we will listen. Computer.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It does.
Yeah,
it does happen. I'm saying it doesn't happen in my classroom, and so that's why I'm not worried about it. But it does happen.
If you want to hear our gripes about the teachers who did us wrong, go to Patreon and subscribe at Patreon. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the after show. And we'll share our horror stories there. Speaking of horror stories, zombie Hemmer, like
terrifying,
popping up out of nowhere. Oh my gosh, what a great! And there's been a discussion amongst like genre cinephiles of like the different types of zombies. What's scarier? What do you do in the zombie apocalypse? This character had it right, or this film depicted it in this particular way. Do you have do you enjoy zombie movies? Do you have a favorite?
I do have a favorite. I don't know if that's the word. Like, I don't seek out zombie movies, but I have two movies that stand out in my mind quite a bit. The first is World War Z, because my nephew, one of my nephews dragged me to see that when he hates horror movies, but he was like, Auntie, take me to see this. And I was like, you and I, neither of us likes horror movies. Why do you want to see this? But because everybody was seeing it, he really wanted to see it. And it was really, really good. So that has a special place in my heart because thankfully it was good. And because I watched it with my nephew, and that's just like a special memory.
Yeah.
And then the second one, which is like my own favorite, not having to do with anyone else, is Zombieland. Because it's so, the double tap. I don't know. I say that, I feel like I think about that scene when he gets into the car and then the zombie's behind him and he's like, you always check the back seat. I think about that so often when I'm getting in my car. I'm just like, you got to check the back seat for zombies. I don't know. Like, the fact that a movie that's so dumb could have something stick with me so hard for so long is magical. And I think that's the kind of movie that I could just watch that every day and get new laughs every time. So yeah. How about you? Do you have a favorite zombie movie?
Yeah, I think I've narrowed it down to 3. I love Shaun of the Dead. Combining the extreme situation of the zombie apocalypse with the repressed British social sensibilities is so funny to me.
It is really funny.
Nick Frost, Simon Pegg,
perfect duo.
Yeah, such
Can't do anything wrong.
Yeah, such a great pairing. It's such a fantastic movie with a great soundtrack, and Edgar Wright, fantastic director. And if you are a fan of the horror genre, there are so many little Easter eggs throughout that where they are clearly acknowledging their own love for that genre. It's such a great movie. Tough to go wrong with George Romero, Night of the Living Dead.
Terrifying.
Yeah. And, seeing the movie it's not the first zombie movie. It's not the first, but it is the first that really set the stage for a lot of modern zombie horror.
It's the standard, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Seeing, and all the commentary throughout it on social issues, racial issues, gender issues, like
judging a book by its cover.
Yeah, like take another look at Night of the Living Dead. It's such a great movie. And I think the last one I think I'm gonna go with Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead. Like it was such a good remake. It essentially kicked off his career of very over the top, very visually stunning movies. And trying to remake a classic is tough in and of itself, but really putting your own stamp on it and getting the fandom's seal of approval is a pretty big accomplishment in and of itself. Mostly I as a Johnny Cash fan, I love the opening title sequence where he uses that Johnny Cash song, The Man Comes Around, as Johnny Cash is describing essentially the end of the world, with all these like news footage of different from around the world of different zombie attacks. It's such a great way to set the stage, the establishing shot, if you will, for this entire narrative. I really enjoy that one. But yeah, it's my wife and I are actually really big fans of The Walking Dead. The book, not necessarily the show.
Didn't know it was a book. Is it a book series?
It is a comic series from Image.
Okay.
And we picked up volume 1 right around the time that the show premiered. And so we were reading and watching the show and the book, and as it was going along. And I'll tell you, I feel like I've read a lot of comics in my life and seen a lot of stuff depicted in comics. There's a couple of shots in the book that they'll never show on television that would rival the brutality in, dare I say, any movie, certainly in this country, maybe the world. And when I lend people the volumes to start reading, when it gets to a particular one, I'm like, this one is the decider. You're either going to stick with this or this is where it'll end. And but yeah, if you have any inclinations to read the one thing I will say about both of them, and the really good zombie movies actually do a really good job of this, it's not about the zombies. You're depicting this group of survivors and what they are doing in an extreme situation. And The Walking Dead is a great examination of a likely depiction of humanity given
when the crap hits the fan.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really fascinating. So highly recommend if you feel so inclined. But the other thing that really stuck out to me in this episode that I wanted to ask you about was there is this sense of Uhura, and again, it really does lend itself to a lot of horror movie tropes of a singular character knowing that something is wrong, trying to convey that to other people with no evidence, so nobody believes them. Have you ever felt that way? Has that ever happened to you? Of just kind of like, I know this thing for a fact. I know it deep in my soul. And for whatever reason, I either can't convey it or I don't have the evidence to back me up. But whatever it is, people are just not on board. Like, have you ever had that feeling? You ever had that scenario happen for you?
That's a good question. I think that's actually the first time anyone's ever asked me that question, because we talk about this trope a lot in Trek. This is one of my favorite things when a character is like says something crazy, because almost always in Star Trek, they believe them. They're like, well, run a scan. They're like, you heard a weird noise, run a scan. Like, they're just like, sure, sounds right. You saw a ghost on the bridge? Okay, let's run a scan. I mean, they're just like, they just believe you. Yeah. And I'm always like, how weird is this world where people believe you when you say crazy things with no evidence, and people are just like, we take it at face value. This is the only time that I can remember where people were like, okay, Uhura, maybe that's not real. However, Kirk comes in and he's just like, I believe you. You seem like you're on the level. So it still had that Trek trope. For me, I think there are times when I really believe in something, and usually I don't ask people's opinions. So I don't usually find myself in the scenario because I just have learned to trust myself. So if I'm hearing a weird noise, I'm hearing a weird noise. there's something going on. If I see something out of the corner of my eye, there's something out of the corner of my eye. Something scurrying. Like
Right.
if I just got to a point where I had to be my own Kirk. You know, I had to just be like, if I think there's something going on, just trust it, investigate it. If there's nothing, there's nothing. But I don't tend to ask anyone else to second it or double check it or tell me if I'm crazy. So, you know, I guess that can be like a strength and a weakness. A strength in the sense that I can be very independent, a weakness in the sense that I could do something really crazy and like I would totally do it because there'd be nobody there to stop me or to be like, hey, that's a terrible idea. Like I wouldn't even ask. So yeah, no, I don't think I've been in her exact position where I'm trying to convince people of anything and they're just not listening, because I wouldn't try to convince people. I would just be like, I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Like that's it. Like why? Yeah, I don't need any more confirmation. But have you ever been in this position?
That's
pretty frustrating.
Yeah, the thing that jumps to the forefront of my mind was when I started my career in law enforcement. I was a guard at the county jail, and this was very much a time where technology had advanced, procedures had advanced, yet for some reason we were still doing things a very old way. And we were not able to convince the command to, hey, can we make these changes? Can we save money by doing this? Can we, make it easier for your officers to do their job? Essentially makes it better for the population that you have in here. Can we do all these things that are going to be so beneficial in the long run? And we were just not able to convince them to pull the trigger on anything.
That's frustrating.
Yeah. And it was just kind of like, listen, we understand that you have an office. You got a door with your name on it. Congratulations.
But that door means something. You got to do something with that office.
Yeah. You've got a staff in here working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, who know what's wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe check with them.
Well, that happens a lot with education between the teachers and the administration, because the teachers are with the kids and the administration a lot of times either have not been in the classroom for decades or were never in the classroom. And so they don't have the same understanding of what it's like to work with a group of students. And gosh, that sounds really frustrating. And I wonder, here's the question. Here's the question for you listening. Let us know. Email in and let us know the answer to this question if you know it. That person in that office who's not listening to the people who are working on the ground, did they get in that office because they don't listen to the people? Or did being in that office turn them into the type of person who does not listen to those people? Because why are those people always in the office? Like, how does this happen?
Yeah.
Is the chicken or the egg? I need to know. So if you know the answer to this question, please email in. Let us know so Todd can convey that information to me.
Yeah. And there was one instance where I was working a post. I worked third shift, midnight to 8 a.m. and it was getting towards the end of the shift. And the major or the direct, like one of the two
bosses.
highest ups came in to do a spot check, a random spot check, and was looking over everything, did a round, checked everything was good. And then looked at one of our procedures and was like, and even said out loud, gosh, I got to get this digitized for you guys. And it was just like, yes, please do. Oh, please do. And nothing happened. It was almost just kind of, it would have been better if he had said
It was worse,
nothing.
yeah. Yes, it was worse. Because now it was an unfulfilled promise. It was an acknowledgement that this is not efficient and effective, and yet I will do nothing about it. You're like, why don't you just pretend like you didn't see it?
And shifting gears a little bit, and and I'll touch on this. I don't want to let it go by without us acknowledging the potential for the discussion here in Trek, but I wonder if maybe this was intentional, maybe unintentional. Commentary on Me Too of someone like something's wrong, something's going on here, something's happening to me.
Yeah.
And everyone around you is just kind of like, well, I don't see it. I don't know. And again, I may be way off base here.
It might have been because it might have been written at that time.
Maybe.
I think what's a bit unusual is the fact that everyone didn't believe, to me, just watching Trek, is the fact that everyone didn't believe her immediately. Because I'm thinking back to, do you remember that episode of TNG where Beverly was trapped in the warp bubble and everybody on the ship kept disappearing?
Yes.
And she was like, people are disappearing. And they were like, what? And the fact that they didn't listen to her was how she was in some alternate reality. Because normally they'd be like, oh, let's run some scans. People are disappearing. And they did do that at first, but then everybody just kept on disappearing. And then they were like, those people never existed. So when you see gaslighting in Star Trek, it's some kind of alternate universe because they're like the opposite. So it was a bit unusual in this episode that everyone didn't believe her. Didn't just absolutely believe her with no evidence whatsoever. It was surprising that everyone was like, you're just tired. It's just deuterium poisoning. It's something else. And then even when she said it was not deuterium poisoning because of this. And then Chapel was just like, yeah, but you're still tired. It was like, ugh. And she walks away. That was quite unusual for Trek.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that I don't know if this was a nod to the Me Too movement or if this was just a standard Trek trope or if it was a little of column A and a little of column B. But I do like that they brought in the likable character of Kirk to be like, I will listen to you. I will be your ally in this. And I will believe what you have to say. That felt more Trek to me. Then later on, when Ramon goes running around, stabbing people, shanking people left and right. Yeah. And then Uhura's like, I should go out there and find him. And then she, the person who's been hallucinating now has a loaded weapon and is going through the hallways. I was like, this also is Trek. Where is the security training here? This is a terrible plan. Does anybody see how terrible this plan is? But that's also such a Trek trope, is that Starfleet security just makes the worst decisions always.
Yeah.
Like giving someone who is hallucinating a loaded weapon to go through the halls and shoot at things.
Yeah.
When we know she's seeing things that aren't there. So that also made me laugh because I was like, this is actually Kirk listening to her is like such a lovely thing. Them letting her go out in the scenario is such a terrible thing, but both are very Trek. Like they're very Trek. And so, and then also when she kind of connected with Ramon later, when they were talking and she was like, I hear what you're hearing. It was kind of like, if this was a nod to Me Too or even just the Trek trope of, I understand you're not crazy. Yeah. She actually had that moment with Ramon. You're not crazy. I'm hearing it too. It is a real thing that I'm hearing. However, whatever you're also seeing, like the hallucinations are not real and you're going to like kill us, like stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this. We can work together to find the solution to this. That was such a good scene. Yeah. Like I forgot about it until I watched it again last night. I forgot about the explosion part. I was like, oh my, like both times it was a visceral reaction to me of like, that was another shock. That was like him in the turbo lift. That was such a shock, that scene. Yes. But then I thought, I guess it had to happen because he killed a bunch of people. So they weren't going to let this character survive and then get treatment. They were just going to blow him out of an airlock.
Yeah. All right. Airlock him.
Rest in peace, Ramon. Rest in peace, Ramon.
He is a red shirt. I mean, it was written. It was written.
His fate was sealed.
Yeah, exactly. Did this episode bring about anything else for you? As we kind of are working our way through our little analysis and what it makes us think of and reminds us of and how we feel about it. Anything else jump out of this episode for you?
The only other kind of moments that jumped out, I really liked Pelia and Uhura talking in the shuttle. And with Pelia saying like, this is about Himmer. And you could see Una just like tearing up and being like, it is about Himmer, but I didn't want to say it. And I wondered what like that scene where she's tearing up and she's looking at Pelia and then she looks away. I wasn't sure what she was going to say because Pelia said, if you want to keep, she said, this is really about Himmer. It's not about the grades. And then she said, but if you want to keep blaming me and say that it's about the sea, I'll believe that. And I was wondering if Una was going to say, it is about the sea. Like, I was wondering if she was going to like just say that or if she was going to say, you know what, it really is about Himmer. And she said neither. Like, she just looked and then it went to the next scene. But I was like holding my breath. I was like, is she going to admit that she has feelings and that the feelings are upsetting? Or is she going to hide the feelings? Or is she going to, like, what's she going to do? I really enjoyed that moment of complexity. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed the whole Sam and James Kirk dynamic. The whole sibling thing just it just delighted me. It tickled me. The last scene where it's the two of them on Uhura and Sam is just like, I'm proud of you. And he's like, thanks. And then they're just staring at each other awkwardly.
Yeah.
And then he's like, aren't you going to say something back to me? Uh-huh. I just thought that was just such a sibling moment. And it just really made me laugh. I love that they brought that for anyone who has siblings. It feels real. Like, it just felt authentic. It felt like this is a sibling moment. This is the thing that siblings do. Mm-hmm. Grown people, super grown. This is the thing that they're still doing. They're fighting over toys or whatever. So I really enjoyed that.
You have siblings?
I have an older sister and a younger brother. Yeah.
Okay. I'm the youngest of three boys. And our parents had us generations apart. So
Wow. So you were like an only child.
Just about. Yeah. My next oldest brother is 13 years older than me. And my oldest brother is 20 years older than me.
Wow.
But my middle brother, Chris, he and I used to pal around all the time because he had a car. So mom would, send him to pick me up from school and this, that, and the other. And so we would bebop around, doing things, and people thought we were father and son. But we were talking to each other like brothers. So we got a lot of weird looks from people going, I can't believe
what a disrespectful son.
So disrespectful to his father.
That's funny. Yeah, my brother's 11 years younger than me. So he was pretty much raised like an only child, but my sister was only 4 years older than me. Oh. So we were Sam and Jim Kirk. Like we were that, like, really, honestly, the 10 years, 13 years, 15 years, 20 years apart makes for better relationships, I think, because the 4 years is, you're fighting over toys, you're fighting over attention, you're your only playmate and your buddy best friends, and then something happens and now you hate each other's guts. And I don't know, that's why it felt so real to me, the moment where they're just like, you know what, I'm really proud of you. It's like 2 seconds of peace and harmony followed by 10 minutes of being on each other's nerves. I just really enjoyed that. And overall, I thought this was just a beautiful episode. I think at the end when she's like, we want to seek out new life and we found it, and it's a new life that, we've never even heard of before. I thought that was very cool. Again, no evidence. Pike's just like, all right, blow it up. Like, okay, but whatever. But Uhura was telling the truth, and there is this species that we can't see. And I think that is one of the most special things about Trek, is this new forms of life that are not organic life. They are not life as we've known it on this planet. Yeah. And when they're really conceptualized, because a lot of the aliens in, at least in TNG, in all the previous shows before we could really do good CGI, a lot of the aliens just look like humans with pointy ears, or humans with ruffled nose, or humans with pointy eyebrows, or whatever, because they have to be played by human actors. So there are limitations. They have to have 2 arms, 2 legs. They have to stand up straight. Their eyes have to be in the front. Like, there's limitations to that when you can only have a human actor. They can't fly. There's limitations. And then you do CGI, and sometimes that doesn't look so great. But I always loved stuff like the crystalline entity, or the sentient sand, or something where you can be like, what could be alive that doesn't look like 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes in the front? And so in this case, I thought it was really interesting that we have this alien species that can communicate telepathically, but only in simple images. And we don't know what this alien species looks like, but they're taking the form of memories and people. So we can still have the constraints of human actors, but with this idea of some mysterious alien species that we can't quite conceive of, I think this is the perfect place for such a being. So that was really delightful.
Yeah, I'm reminded of, speaking of TNG, I'm reminded of the big speech from Picard in Measure of a Man. We champion ourselves, finding new life. Well, there it sits. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, being able to open your mind to not everybody communicates the same way. I thought it was so fascinating to watch Uhura piece together what this alien species was saying through her own memories of, like, that is mind-boggling as a dungeon master, like, who I've put my players through, like, hey, decipher this code, good luck. That, and seeing them struggle of, like, okay, and what was it's okay, it's this is this and this is this, but you have to read it this way, like, and all of those things. But there's other times where it's sitting right in front of you, of like, don't forget the humanity that's right in front of you. I was having a conversation with a good friend, Flip Kiki, the Trek Queen of NYC, and we were talking about how coming back to Starfleet Academy, and one of the things that nearly brought me to tears was the Boothby sign, over the pavilion, the Boothby, the Boothby Park, the Boothby Pavilion sign, and of course the names, the names on the wall, and looking at those names, you recognize some of the names, but the rank is different. The rank continued, and it, I think and I'm going to do my best not to cry when I say this. It's interesting that even though these things, are so special to us, when they're not in front of our faces, their story is important. Their story continues on. And how much of that is in our real world? You know, we hear about these horrible things happening, and it's really easy to be like, yeah, but it's not happening in my front yard. Yeah, but it's happening in someone's front yard. And it's important to keep that in mind, because there's people who can't avoid it, who can't ignore it. And I've said before, if we ever hope to reach the stars, we have to reach sideways first. Nobody gets there alone. And it's really hard if you don't have any sort of empathy for the stuff that people have gone through. You and I have, I'm sure, lived very different lives, but this is one thing that we can connect on. And it takes reaching out. It takes saying, hey, I love this thing too. Would you like to get together and get to know each other and learn about each other and have fun and talk about these things, and maybe we'll grow and enrich each other. Like, this is what Trek is supposed to be. So I think it's easy to maybe dismiss this episode of like, all right, what kind of bucket of space syrup do we have to get out of this week? But like, there's some deep stuff here. There's some deep, rich stuff here. And I thank you for coming on to share it with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So we've done, a really thorough breakdown of, a lot of stuff that happens in this episode and our thoughts and feelings about it. But, as we do every episode, lovingly, we ask the question, who do we blame? This episode was written by Onitra Johnson and David Reed. Now, based on her IMDb page, Onitra Johnson seems to be kind of at the beginning of her career. We've said with many people before, hey, you got to start somewhere. We're getting on right at the beginning of Onitra Johnson's creative journey. I'm really excited to see what she brings to future projects, hopefully in the franchise, but other things as well. And David Reed, his last work in the franchise was actually earlier this season, the episode Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which we discussed with Joe Dove from the Captain's Quadrant. And this episode was directed by Dan Liu. Now, the last episode we talked about featuring Dan Liu as a director was season 1, episode 4 of Strange New Worlds, Memento Mori, which we discussed with our Gorn ambassador, Drew Burris from the Starfinder actual play Cosmic Crit on YouTube. And we've got, some very familiar faces returning in the guest star spot. We've got, of course, Paul Wesley as James Kirk, the wonderful Carol Kane as Pelia, and Bruce Horak coming back as Hemmer and Zombie Hemmer. It was great to see Bruce again. But the spotlight that I want to shine is on Michael Reventar as Lieutenant Saul Ramon. From Toronto, Canada, which is not a surprise. They get a lot of folks from Canada. Canada's got a plethora, a huge multitude of wonderful character actors. And Saul and Michael Reventar is definitely one of them. He actually cultivated his musical gifts early on as a classically trained pianist, eventually going on to win the Kiwanis Music Festival at the age of 12. And his first, I struggled through 6 weeks of piano lessons. That is impressive. His first major acting credit was a Canadian crime docudrama called Dual Suspects back in 2011. And Michael's appeared on a variety of shows, including Nikita, The Transporter, Beauty and the Beast, The Flash, The Strain, Titans, and the Mayor of Kingstown. Unfortunately, given what happens to him in this episode, it looks like this might be the last appearance for him in the franchise until he gets recast as an alien and buried in prosthetics.
Or comes back in someone's terrible memories.
Exactly.
There's always a way to come back in Trek.
Oh yeah. Look at Vaughn Armstrong, look at Jeffrey Combs. Like, they'll come back as anything. So, Shereese, let's get to another question that we ask every episode. Is this essential viewing? If somebody is sitting down and going through Star Trek for the very first time and they come to this episode, Lost in Translation, is this a must-see episode or is this one they can skip?
I really enjoyed this episode. I think it's got a lot of these classic tropes that we love. It's got just the beauty. It's got definitely some spooky sides to it, which Trek is not always spooky, but Strange New Worlds has a lot of spooky episodes, considering there's only 10 episodes a season.
Yeah.
That all being said, I would say this is not a must-watch episode. I would pick, if I had to pick things from Strange New Worlds and it had to be an Uhura episode, I'd probably pick the one with the being and the music.
Yes.
I would pick that one over this as far as a Uhura-centered translation important episode, because I think that episode is so interesting and maybe not creepy, because creepy is maybe not my thing. But I just thought I would love to have more of that being. I would just love to have more of I want another part of that exact episode. Like I want a part 2 of that whole episode, because I still have so many questions about it. Yeah. So this one I'd probably say skip this one and watch that one.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I absolutely agree. If you are an Uhura fan, and you're following an Uhura track, this is probably a good one. We've talked about zombie movies and different horror tropes, not only the zombie factor, but also the paranoia and frustration of like something's going on. Yeah. I can't figure it out. Those things have been explored certainly throughout the franchise. So they're those aren't new concepts to Trek.
No,
but
it's done very well here.
But it's done very well here. But in terms of like the overall franchise, I have to agree. I think this is one you can skip. As a Trek fan, I'm inclined to say don't skip anything, because all Trek is awesome. But
as a Trek fan, I'm inclined to say skip some stuff. And then the ones that you love, watch them over and over and over, because that's what I do.
Exactly. Listen, there's no wrong way to watch Star Trek. Just love the Star Trek you love, and if you don't love it, you can go back to the Star Trek that you love, and that's fine. Shereese, thank you so much for coming on the show. Do we have any parting thoughts before we wrap things up about this episode, the series, the franchise, your experience, your first, hopefully not your last, appearance on the Computer Resume podcast? Any parting thoughts before we go?
Just one thing, when I was reading the name of the podcast, I thought it said Computer Resume, and I was so confused. So
I have disappointed so many IT professionals. Yeah. No. I understand you're looking for a job. We're talking about Star Trek. Sorry.
So that's my main parting thought, was Computer Resume makes a lot more sense. It makes a lot more sense. And then also, there's the whole classic Trek, legacy Trek, old Trek, new Trek, whatever. I would say that there's so many good shows, so many good shows. And if you don't like one show, like if you're kind of getting into Trek and you're trying to watch one and you're like, oh, I'm not really feeling this one, just watch the next one. There's so many, just keep going. Certainly, surely, at least one of them you will latch onto and you will freaking love, and it will blow your mind. And I think that's what it's all about. You don't have to fall head over heels for every single show in the entire franchise. But it's great. But I feel like it's great that there's something for everyone. There's something in here, whether you like more action or you like more politics or you like more wartimey stuff or you like more shenanigans and colorful outfits. There's just so much for people to enjoy. I'm sure if somebody's listened this far, they're probably a hardcore Trek fan. So I'm preaching to the choir. But if someone is newly converted, welcome to the universe.
Yes.
And also, if you see an episode you don't love, it's okay. Just skip it. It's okay. It will happen. But there are some really, really good ones in there. And man, you're in for such a treat.
Yes. Thank you so much again. Well, folks, next time we'll have another very special guest for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 7, Those Old Scientists. And if you're not sure what that means, trust me, this episode is a doozy and a goodie. I'm really excited to talk about that. Those Old Scientists is available wherever you decide to watch Star Trek. Shereese, what do you have going on in the world that people can seek out and follow and engage with you a little bit more? What do you got?
I have two things. First is a project coming up that I'm super excited about. I am writing my first book. well, first book series, but I guess you have to finish one technically before you can call it a series. You need more than one.
That's true.
But I am writing a series. Okay, the series will be written, and it's going to be a murder mystery in space. Not necessarily Trek, but it's definitely going to be just more like those, like the CSI type things. But it's also going to be a comedy, so maybe more like Psych if you've ever seen that show. But with space stuff. And won't that be fun?
Yes.
So, if you want to know more, you can go to thescifisavage.com and sign up for my newsletter where I'll be telling people when that is coming out. I've never written a book before, so I have no promises on when said book will come out or how great it will be. But my goal, my actual commitment is that the first book at least will be published this year. And then I have about 5 more in this series that I want to come out. So there's a thing. And then the second thing is where you can find me on the internet, which is on all the social media places. You can go to the SciFiSavage on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Thinking, am I on LinkedIn? I don't think so. So just stick with those. And then also on YouTube, I do a live stream every Wednesday night where I talk about Trek. Right now I'm doing a run through, at the time of this recording, I'm doing a run through through Star Trek Academy episodes. So if you want to come and just chat about last week's episode and just talk about it and geek out about it and make predictions about what we think is going to happen, then definitely join me there every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific at the SciFiSavage on YouTube.
And I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all of the socials. From all of us at the Computer Resume podcast, thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you in 10 Forward.
Support us on Patreon and rate, review, and share on all your favorite platforms. Feel free to send us your subspace transmissions to computerresumepodcast@gmail.com or at Computer Resume on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Computer Resume podcast was created and produced by Mr. Todd A. Davis. Our logo was designed by Will Martin and Justin Bishop. The opening theme was produced by Justin Bishop, and our outro music was provided with permission by Dronode. Additional music was provided by Mr. Todd A. Davis and Gary Horn, and the voice of Computer Resume podcast and executive producer, me, Kat Davis. # LLAP. We'll see you next time.
Going through a Star Trek. We're doing Star Trek stuff in space. We probably got some phasers and shuttle pods, and we're gonna find a brand new race.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?